intent of duping sovereign nations into signing their sovereignty over to the U.S. and then taking their land from them still. Just making them straight U.S. subject citizens in about 15, so 85 years, within an 85-year process from the Indian Citizenship Act to the Kacheri versus Salazar, make all of these Indian citizens and then just take away their lands after they sign them over. 85 years to do that. Colonization is still alive and well, but the beauty of it is that Creator has shown us a different path. So you can deal with the feds believing that they have your interest in mind if you want, Indian nations. You can pursue the federal recognition relationship if you want. You can do all of that. The of it is that Creator has shown us a different path. So you can deal with the feds believing that they have your interest in mind if you want, Indian nations. You can pursue the federal recognition relationship if you want. You can do all of that. Do it. As a nation, you are well within your rights to choose to do whatever you want. But we just want to show you what the real game is that they're playing on you and what you're getting yourself into when you agree to that, or when you agree to let Congress pass an act to put your lands into their federal trust. If you're going to be sovereign, then you shouldn't be looking for the feds or any other nation to do anything for you. You should be looking to figure out how you do things on your own. And if sovereignty is truly the goal of our nations, then we need to start to think and act sovereignly. And if we don't, then what right do we have to complain when the federal government or the Trump administration decides to do what this U.S. has been doing since it was formalized here in Indian lands?
Alright, so basically, as Hawaiian people from the Hawaiian Kingdom, we are sovereign. The Creator has shown us a beautiful path where we can put our lands in trust and take back our sovereignty. Federal recognition won't do this. We must go through this process instead of federal recognition and retain our sovereignty instead of signing away our rights to America. So we're gonna get in the next video, but let's get it.
Aloha, and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff from Hawaii News Now. It's been 22 years since President Bill Clinton signed a bill apologizing for the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. Many sovereignty proponents hoped the apology bill would lead to formal recognition of a native Hawaiian governing entity, but there are still competing visions of what that government could look like, and hurdles to clear even after Native Hawaiians reach consensus. Could a renewed push for Native Hawaiian Constitutional Convention galvanize the community and You can also watch Insights streamed live at pbshawaii.org. Could a renewed push for Native Hawaiian Constitutional Convention galvanize the community and pave the way for self-determination? Tonight on Insights, what would it take to achieve Hawaiian sovereignty? We encourage viewers to join tonight's conversation by calling 973-1000 if you live on Oahu, or 800-238-4847 if you're calling from a neighbor island. You can also watch Insights streamed live at pbshawaii.org. Just click on the Insights logo, or you can find us on Twitter at PBS Hawaii. Now to our panel. Peter Apo is trustee with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. He previously served 12 years in the State House of Representatives and was also former Governor Ben Cayetano's special assistant on Hawaiian affairs. Lilikala Kamaelehiva is the director of the Kamakakuokalani Center for Hawaiian Studies at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. Dr. Kamaelehiva is a trained historian with expertise in Hawaiian cultural traditions and the Hawaiian sovereignty movement. Kalekoa Kaeo is an associate professor of Hawaiian studies at the University of Hawaii Maui College. A well-known sovereignty activist, Mr. Kaeo was recently arrested for protesting construction of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. And Bumpy Kanahele is the head of state for the nation of Hawaii, which is headquartered at Pu'uhonoa o Waimanalo. In 1994, Mr. Kanahele was awarded the lease for the Waimanalo village after a 15-month occupation at Makapu'u Beach Park. Mr. Kanahele is also the CEO for Aloha First, a nonprofit organization working toward Native Hawaiian reconciliation and restitution. And let me start with Lilikala Kamaelehiva. What is sovereignty? Let's kind of do a little bit of a sort of sovereignty 101 here. People, don't understand or they have preconceived notions about these words. When we talk about sovereignty, what are we talking about?
A lot of people have different ideas about what that means, but for me it means political control over land. And that's the simplest way to put it. It's not a feeling in your heart. It's political control over land. At the moment, we Hawaiians don't have political control over land, and that's what we're seeking.
Bumpy Kanahele, you ended up with some control over some land. Is it as simple a definition as that, or is it more complicated to you?
I think the word is national sovereignty. And that is the identity of the people concerned and the control over the national lands. It's very clear in the United Nations documents and stuff that national sovereignty exists in the Hawaiian people today. Always did.
Is there any, Mr. Kaeo, is there any dispute anymore that the Hawaiian Kingdom was illegally annexed by the United States?
I mean, I would even use it illegally. I think they were never annexed at all. I mean, if you actually look at the facts of our history, it's very clear the United States tried formally in 2 attempts to annex the Hawaiian Islands, both in 1893 and later in 1897. And because of the organizing of our people with the Ku'e petitions and the Queen's letter of protest, the U.S. Senate failed, again I repeat, failed to ratify that secondary treaty. So when you use the illegal, say that makes the idea that it was an actual annexation. And my challenge would be to anyone out there, show me any evidence of fact of having any annexation.
So in your mind, what does sovereignty mean now?
Sovereignty to me means, as in Hawaii we say, ko'oko'a manapia, which is having the full authority and control of your lives, your destiny, your land, your resources, your education, and really your future as a people. Sovereignty is something that, in fact, when we talk about sovereignty, I don't believe there's such a thing as a sovereignty movement. I think we need to understand that sovereignty was achieved in 1843 in the Hawaiian Kingdom when we became a recognized nation state. That's a historical fact. What has happened since, of course, 1843, specifically 1893 and 1898, 1900, was the taking away of our right to control our resources and control our lives. But that's really talking in the language of re-recognition or re-control of our sovereignty. That's not the same as saying we're trying to achieve something. Because the fact is we already achieved it back in 1843.
And let me ask Peter Apo with OHA, is there a difference between sovereignty and independence?
Yes.
How would you break?
Well, sovereignty does not necessarily include independence in this case. So when you look at those who champion federal recognition is getting, basically leads to the Indian model of a nation within a nation. Independence, in this case, means that that as Kaleko pointed out, that the nation was never, the sovereignty of the nation was never extinguished. That we don't recognize the jurisdiction of the United States. So they're 2 different things. But I think essentially, in terms of fast forwarding from 1893, 117 years ago, something bad happened, and a whole population, Hawaiians and others who were citizens, were disenfranchised illegally from their sovereignty and from their nationhood. And it's been 37 years since the OHA has been created. and that we've been trying to figure out a way to resolve this, to try to come up with a common vision of what we mean by sovereignty, as Kala pointed out earlier. And it's a very difficult navigation because, as she mentioned, within the Hawaiians, they all have a little different version of what we mean by sovereignty. But I will say this, until there is a resolution to this abiding tension that has existed for 117 years between Hawaiians and the rest of Hawaii, Hawaii will never be whole.
Yeah.
It's got to be resolved.
Lilikala Kama'elihua, so I understand. There's a difference between independence and sovereignty in your mind, yes? So where do you think is the model of federal recognition? How does that look?
You know, when I look at what our people need today, we need land, we need housing, we need to have a place where we can find shelter. If you look at the 520,000 or 25,000 Native Hawaiians, where 50% of us are somewhere else outside of Hawaii because we can't afford housing. We've got quite a number of our people who are homeless as well, or houseless as they say it. We need land now. And we need to have houses now. We need to have a place where we can grow food and feed our people. We need to run our own school system, absolutely, because the DOE does not serve the Hawaiian nation, or Hawaiian children, or Hawaiian identity. So when I look at all those things, I say, okay, how can we achieve that as quickly as possible? Because I'm a grandmother now, and I don't want to wait longer. And I think we have some really dire problems right now that we need to resolve. So I look at federal recognition as a way to come to control some land, have a government that is not a state agency. I think OHA works very hard to find ways to support the Hawaiian people. Sometimes we disagree politically, but I think their hearts are true. The hearts are good. Our problem is it's a state agency, and everybody gets to vote for OHA. We need to have a government where Hawaiians vote for those government officials, and people are responsible to the communities that they come from, to the islands that they come from. And if the community says, we don't like what you do, they vote you out. That's old story, democracy. So when I look at federal recognition, which is not perfect, not for Native Americans, not for Alaska Natives, it's not perfect, I still see opportunity there that we might not have any other way. I don't think we're going to be independent tomorrow. And if we were, do we have young people who are going to run the nation, who are going to plant food and take care of water, take care of medicine, take care of education? Do we have young people who can do that? Can we run our own nation? So federal recognition actually gives us a chance to practice all those things, and then we can talk about independence. But right now, we're outnumbered by non-natives. So if we were independent tomorrow, that doesn't mean Hawaiians would get anything.
Right. Let me go to Kalaikoa Kaeo. Is federal recognition enough for you in terms of...
Definitely not. I mean, I'm one of those very, very clear out there that federal recognition, to me, and assimilation is death to our people. And all you got to do is look at history. If you understand, if you put Hawaiians under federal Indian law, and there's some things about federal Indian law you gotta understand, what they call the Marshall Trilogy. We look at things with doctrine of discovery, being a dependent domestic nation, you be a trustee, a ward. These are words and language in which, under U.S. federal law, how American Indians are treated, I should say treated, mistreated, dehumanized, living in situations that are appalling. And yet, I find it very troubling. The trustees and other leaders in my community somehow believe that's a step forward. For me, that's a step towards death as a people. Our kupuna left out with this message, Ea o Kaina. Wamau ke ea. Ea o Kaina is not federal Indian policy. Ea o Kaina, again, with the land, the control. If we cannot have a situation which we can decide for ourselves, what happens at Mauna Kea? Let me ask that question. How would engaging in federal recognition stop what's going on in Mauna Kea? And I would suggest it wouldn't stop Mauna Kea, it wouldn't stop Maui, it wouldn't stop in regards to returning the waters to our streams. These are situations which tell us directly, unless we bring life back to the land, we're really talking about the death of our people. So
I would argue the exact opposite. I would say that if we had federal recognition, we could control Mauna Kea, we could control Haleakala, we could control our lands. And that is really a difference of opinion, of course. But I would argue that those kinds of things could be controlled by a nation that is recognized by the federal government.
Let me give you an example. How would it change education? Federal policies of no child left behind. That's a federal policy.
Yes, it is.
American Indians are forced to follow these policies. When they look to education, who do American Indians look to education? They look at to the Hawaiians. See the situation, but the point I want you to understand
No,
is that
absolutely.
if
Well,
you're
I
gonna
want
get
us to
let me-
run
let
our
me-
own-
let me
No,
finish my
okay,
point.
okay.
Let me finish my point.
No,
My point.
I've asked both of you to.
Yeah,
Okay, stop
I
for a
just
second.
want to make my point. Just all I say is that let's look at factual situations. Let's look at facts. No child left behind. Race to the top. These are federal programs.
And this is normal in our society where majority of the women, they like to assimilate, feel comfortable at ease, protected, going with the flow. And the men are trying to identify these different things that are harming us and trying to navigate away from them into a calmer stream. You know? And this is the rift between the man and the woman. And this is what's creating the destruction of the Hawaiian family.
Programs that are imposed upon our Hawaiian education right now that we're forced. That's a federal program.
And it doesn't have to be in the federally recognized nation. They don't have to follow that.
Okay, which American
Absolutely.
Indians don't follow that law?
You absolutely don't have to
No,
follow
I'm
it.
asking
You
you,
can say it.
which
You can
American
say it.
Indians do
We
not
don't
follow
want
that
the
law?
money for that.
No, I'm
We're
asking,
gonna do
I'm
our
asking a
own.
very straight question. Which American Indian tribes are not forced to follow those laws?
I don't think
You know, this is one.
They're all
Okay,
forced.
so okay, let's
We're
get Peter.
forced to now that we're not federally recognized.
Okay, Peter. Up.
This is one of the more complicated things to understand. Federal recognition, in and of itself, does not constitute sovereignty or nation.
Correct.
Federal recognition simply qualifies Hawaiians as it does Native American Indians and Native Alaskans. And by the way, we are not recognized as Native Americans.
Thank God.
To draft a proposal for sovereignty and for nationhood that then has to be ratified, I assume, by the state of Hawaii and by the federal government. So what that proposal would be is what the upcoming convention, we think, is intended to raise. OHA has a bifurcated mission, and sometimes it doesn't quite match up. The first responsibility we have is, since over the 117 years, beginning with the Hawaiian Homestead Act, there's been a compilation of over 250 federal entitlements for Hawaiians that amount to millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? In the absence of federal recognition, all of that is at risk because we are not Native Americans. So that's why you get the Rice Cayetano, the lawsuits coming down. So federal recognition helps protect those entitlements until such time that we can have some sort of a national proposal.
I want to give Bumpy one shot.
I gotta disagree with that, because if it was, we wouldn't be getting lawsuits every year. Just getting lawsuits. Now, federal recognition not going to help those lawsuits. There's no guarantee.
That's true.
No. I just like to get back to what we're talking about. The national sovereignty. This is where independence takes its reign over federal recognition.
Yeah, I wanted you to get into that a little bit because you and I have had the conversation before about what you picture how this works.
Well, national sovereignty. Prior to 1778, we all had our national sovereignty. Each Kanaka had their identity as a Kanaka, and they had their rights to the lands and natural resources. Now, as soon as, after the Kamehameha, when he united all Hawaiians, he was uniting the sovereignty, the national sovereignty of all of them. Now, after the second, the third comes in, the Mahele totally wipes out communal land tenure, national sovereignty, and then what ends up? The native tenant rights, subject to native tenant rights, it watered down. Now, once it watered down, it of course left avenues open for, non-Hawaiians to come in, businesses and all that, to wipe that out.
You know what, Bumpy, you're wrong about federal recognition. In the absence of federal recognition, the Rice Cayetano decision comes down that says Hawaiians are racist, that you cannot separate out Hawaiians. We cannot organize ourselves in the absence of federal recognition because we do not enjoy the same congressional protection that is afforded every other indigenous people in the United States. So federal recognition, first of all, would allow us to have an election without being threatened by lawsuits that it's a racist.
No, I
So
constantly heard
while you
that.
may disagree with federal recognition as the pathway that you choose to exercise independence and quality of life for Hawaiians, it is very important in protection of the entitlements. We are living on a house of cards. The only thing that says that that protects us in terms of being able to act is the Hawaiian Homestead Act. It's a very, very thin thread because we're not Native American Indians and we're not Native Alaskans.
Can I just wait for a second? Because I want to make sure that I want to be real loyal to our audience here. In that you guys are kind of getting into the points that they're over my head, and I think that they're going to be going over our audiences. So we'll get to these things step by step.
Talk about the national sovereignty part because
all right.
I'm not an American. We're not Americans. If you are, then you're not independent. If you are a national, then you're forced to live under the rule we are. You're forced to use their money. You're forced to use their ID cards. You're forced to use their passports for travel. That's a given that. That's where we're under extreme duress. But we're not Americans. If you're a national, you're not an American. Now, federal recognition will rob me of my national sovereignty. In no way that's going to happen.
Okay, so let me.
Now, and getting just real quick.
Okay.
Now, one of the staff members of OHA, I asked him that question, and he couldn't answer me that there would be no lawsuits. You mean to say that this going to stop the lawsuits? And he couldn't answer. He couldn't answer me.
So as I
It's from
understand,
you guys' office.
I didn't say it was going to stop the lawsuits.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So why we throwing the dice? You know
But
what I mean?
there is a shield that federal recognition provides us that would have prevented the Rice-Cayetano decision. The Rice-Cayetano decision that said we cannot have an election was based on the fact that we have no federal recognition. Period. There is no
But
discussion.
no more guarantee that the lawsuit.
so what I'm hearing, just so to reinterpret a little bit of this, is that while the federal recognition, you folks feel would protect many of these entitlements and give you the ability to stand up,
Right.
but
Federal
also.
recognition allows indigenous peoples of the United States, if you to be exempted from the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Law.
Okay, right. And then, but on the other hand, what I hear you saying, Bumpy Kanahele, is that if you do that, you're basically selling out the concept of nationhood.
No. I asked the attorneys from OHA in our meeting, and they couldn't answer the question. They couldn't give us that. No, we won't get sued. They couldn't give the answer.
So you say it doesn't offer the protection that they
I'm
say.
sure there's going to be lawsuits no matter what we do because people are racist against Hawaiians and they want our land, basically. But we have to figure out how we get people on the land and how do we do
let's
that
give
quickly because
the
we don't
land
have time
to
to
federal
waste.
recognition.
Federal recognition does
Man.
not solve all problems.
Man.
However, if we go independent tomorrow, without rights laid down
Why don't
and
we
without
talk to
lands
these
laid down that
Native
are ours,
Americans
we get
or
nothing.
American
Because there are lots of people out there who live in Hawaii who don't want Hawaiians to have any rights at all.
Okay, Kaliko, last little bit on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to be very clear. See, the conversations you can see, federal recognition is not sovereignty. Right. We gotta understand that. Those are not, so when people try to mix those two, when they talk Kaulana Pua, they try to with federal recognition, they're confused.
So everybody agrees about that.
Yes.
That's true. When they talk about there was an overthrow, but we want federal recognition, to me they're confused.
Self-determination is a better term.
Let me, so I just want to be clear about that. See, as I said, there is no treaty. So first of all, let's be clear. Okay, does everyone agree there's no treaty?
There is no treaty.
There is
So
no treaty.
there is a deep question in regards to a national identity, as Uncle Bambi said. That's clear. So this is not about Hawaiians trying to pretend to become something. This is what Hawaiians trying to say. We are something already. Okay. Now, if people want to choose to give that up, that's by choice. But I would suggest this. Other Hawaiians do not have that right to take that away from us, who have not forgotten, who refuse to give up, who will continue to fight for the Eo Ka'aina. You know, I myself, I understand. If we keep under a system run by people like Governor Ige, or Abercrombie wanted to give away Mauna Kea, and I would suggest that all you got to look at, it's not just about the 14th Amendment. It's about plenary power that Congress will have. It's about making Hawaiians into a domestic,
That's right.
dependent nation. under the U.S. Constitution. It's about waiving your rights to the lands. That's
To
clear.
me, it's about controlling land like the Navajo Nation does. And at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, they can say to everybody who's not Navajo, off you go, this is our land and we control it. And people may say that that's not enough, and people may say derogatory things about Native
But the difference
Americans.
is,
But I really
the Navajo
like,
were never an independent nation,
I
recognized
really-
internationally.
They
That's
were
true.
independent.
Okay,
They
let's-
were
Let me ask this
independent
question.
before the
Let me just
foreigners
be clear.
invaded them.
Let me just be clear.
Let her
Like-
can you finish her
Independence
statement,
is not
please?
set up by all the nations of the
Independence
world.
is clear
For
what it
us,
is,
it
Nicola.
doesn't start in 1843. It starts when our ancestors first lived on this land. Ea is ancient. It doesn't start in
Correct.
1843.
Ea.
Yes, and that is our word for sovereignty. But if we talk about self-determination, let's say, what part of sovereignty is self-determination? How do we decide how we're going to raise our children, how we educate them, what kind of lands we live on?
Self-determination and sovereignty are not the same thing, and you clear about it, correct?
Yes,
Am
I am.
correct? So let's
I
be
am.
clear. Let's not throw.
But I don't
not one
believe
thing clear.
sovereignty
Let's
is
be
going to
clear.
help Hawaiians tomorrow because we are outnumbered. And you know as well as I do, there are lots of people who live in this.
And American Indians are outnumbered, being only 1% of the United States.
They have
Of course they're
land
outnumbered.
that they can live upon, and that's what I want, land that we can live upon, so that all of my cousins can move home from the continent and have a place to live in Hawaii.
Okay, let's all take a moment to take a sip of water.
Well, Daryl, that's what the Constitutional Convention is going to be about. It's going to, this argument is going to be carried over.
Yes.
And hopefully what
Well,
will
this is
happen,
instructive, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to, our viewers have been writing and calling, and I want to get to some of their questions if you guys don't mind. This is
they
very
might help
spirited,
us
and
out.
I appreciate it, but let's all take a little moment. Let's try some of these questions, which may make it worse. Okay, so only a small minority signed up for the role, the Native
Correct.
Hawaiian role. So why should they be allowed to speak for all Native Hawaiians when most Native Hawaiians have shown they don't want to create a race-based government? And why should they be allowed to break apart the state of Hawaii without permission from the rest of Hawaii's people? As a supporter of the Hawaiian role, Peter Apo, how do you respond to that question?
well, I disagree. There's about 120,000 names. Not all of it came from the actual roll commission. Some of it was transferred from two previous registration, but basically the same process took place. People registered with the intention of going to the polls to vote for a delegate for constitutional convention. So you got about 120,000 names, and still counting.
Let's tell the truth. Kanai'olowalo signed up a little more than 30,000, over 100, I think $150, $160 per a signature was paid out of OHA's money to gather the signatures, creating a so-called T-shirt nation, as I say. See, nation building is going on in Mauna Kea. Nation building isn't coming from signing name and putting on a T-shirt. And that's one of the things I'm really frustrated with Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Look at the DUI hearings that came out last year. If you can look at our people and deny the fervor of our people wanting to speak out, wanting to gather, that's nation building. Nation building, it comes from the people. And I'm very saddened when I hear that voice is not listened to. It's not being addressed, and I think the DUI hearings speak to that.
Okay, let me re-ask this question because I think that we may be missing the point a little bit. I think that what this questioner wants to know is whether the state are we looking at breaking the state apart? Was the sort of central this because of the will of a small number of people? Nicola, Hiva, can you try and...
Sure, I think that we are afforded under American law as indigenous peoples a certain land base. Now, the United Nations says that we should have rights to all of the land base that our ancestors controlled. So we'd certainly like to have that right. What we have under America is we have a certain law that allows under federal recognition certain land set aside. I absolutely believe we have to do federal recognition before we go to an independent nation, because we are outnumbered. Now, when we have 80% of the population being Hawaiian, perhaps we won't have that problem. But right now, we have to have land. That's what we have. We must have land. I really admire what Bumpy's done, the land that he has. What happens if the lease runs out? What happens if a government decides they're going to break that lease? I want to address that.
Okay.
I want to solve that problem. I want to make sure we have lands on every island that Hawaiians can live on. Is that breaking the state apart? No. The person who feels like that has a homeland somewhere else and they can go there. Thank you very much. But where do we go? This is our place for 100 generations. We must have land here.
All people gotta make one stand. That's what it is.
That's correct.
You gotta make one stand, whether it's Mauna Kea or village. You gotta take.
That's right.
You gotta let it all go. And federal recognition is not good. I don't care which way you look at it. The Royal Commission. I supported the Royal Commission because there were good people in there that was going in the direction I thought it was going in. Now, I question in it. Again, the Royal Commission is the third process that Native Hawaiians had to choose whether they wanted to or restore whether they wanted to be independent or be integrated with the system. The first one was 1945. The first one shows the national sovereignty, how it resides in a culture of the people's concern. Now that's a big problem for me, especially knowing that that was covered up. Our national sovereignty was covered up in 1945. The process never worked, and what happened was statehood came out of there. Everything after that is not good for us as Hawaiians. Yeah, we're forced to live under it. Yeah, we gotta do this, both sides, and we're gonna argue like this until everybody get it that it's the national sovereignty.
I don't really
that we gotta
understand the thing
restore.
to do about the Royal Commission. It's a voter registration process. That's it. Voter registration, because in order to have an
You
election,
see how fucked up he is? Pardon my language. He's saying, it's not bad. It's just registration. He's playing on our ignorance right now. What do we know about registration? When you register your car, you're giving your car to the state. When you register your child and the birth certificate, you're giving your child away. Every time you're registering something, you're agreeing to take your rights away and to go under something else. So he's saying it's just a registration, but if you know anything, you know that registrations are a way for them to contract you out of your rights. Conform to a specific guideline of rights. So it's just a registration, signing yourself away, your rights away. But they throw around this word registration as if it's not a big thing. Man, it's people.
you have to, and in order to vote in this election, you have to prove somehow that you are a Hawaiian. Now, however you do that, whether it's through the Royal Commission or through the Kauinoa, which is a previous registration process, that's all it is. Okay, it does not say we're going after federal. It's to create an electorate. So for the first time in Hawaiian history, you will have a puvalu or an aha, where the Hawaiians can come out and speak through a democratic process to choose what form of nationhood,
And
or
see how
if they
we
want
love that
nationhood
word,
at all.
democracy.
That's all.
Oh, but it's democracy. But we love democracy. But we don't realize democracy is rude.